It's the SNL Hall of Fame podcast with your host, Jamie Dew, Chief Librarian Thomas Sena, and featuring Matt Ardill. And now, curator of the hall, Jamie Dew.
All right. Thank you, Doug DeNance. It is great to be here in the SNL Hall of Fame. Welcome to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast, a weekly affair. Each episode, we take a deep dive into the career of a former cast member, host, musical guest, or writer, and add them to the ballot for your consideration. Once the nominees have been announced, we turn to you, the listener, to vote for the most deserving and help determine who will be enshrined for perpetuity in the hall. That's right. That's how we play the game. It's really quite simple. And we're thrilled to have you here with us. This has been a great season so far, and it's about to get that much better as we invite SNN correspondent, superfan Sammy K into the conversation room with Thomas Sena to discuss the career of writer Julio Torres. This should be a good one. I'm looking very forward to this. Will Julio be rewarded, or will he be punished for being a writer? We shall see when voting commences. I'm getting way ahead of myself, though. Before you get into this building, you gotta wipe those feet. That's all there is to it. Let's walk down the hallway to my friend Matt Ardill in his Matt's Minutia Minute corner and get to know a little bit more about Julio. What do you say? Matt! Julio Torres!
Yeah, JD, yeah, I can't wait. Like, this one's another one of my picks from the draft, and I am looking forward to this one. I'm looking forward to all of them, but this one in particular because
this is your pick. Yeah, I understand that. That's great. Yeah. So talk to me because I know precious little about Julio Torres.
Yeah, he's pretty private. To be honest, Julio Torres. I don't know his height. One of the few people I've not been able to track that down. So when I do the chart, he's going to be a big question mark.
Oh man.
Makes me feel very old. He is born February 11th, 1987.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah, he co-created Los Espookys with Fred Armisen and Anna Fabergia, as well as working on the Chris Gethard Show as a writer. So
did not know that.
Yeah. So he got to start on Gethard and then went on to SNL, and then all sorts of stuff followed. He was born in El Salvador to a civil engineer who is his father, and an architect / fashion designer mother. His mother has collaborated with him and his sister on comedy projects. He picked up some skills from his mom, and his mom and his sister actually make a lot of his clothes or have them made. His quote I have of him is, "My mother and sister know a tailor in El Salvador who can make anything I sketch with their assistance." So when you see him doing shows, it's often outfits that he, his mom, and his sister have made together.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So he took literary studies at the he took literary studies at the New School in New York.
Okay.
Even as a student, his goal out of the gate was to become a comedy writer, which a lot of the times you don't start that way. You kind of fall into comedy writing.
Yeah.
But it was his goal. He has an HBO special from 2019 called My Favorite Shapes and is credited with 9 writing credits and 25 acting credits, as well as 4 producer credits. He starts his Comedy Central stand-up special by introducing himself as Julio and Aquarius. His favorite color is clear, and starts all of his emails, well. His special is named "I'm a Vegan and I'm so sorry," where he takes the stage with his best friend Crystal, a 4-foot tall talking crystal. So this sort of sets the tone of what to expect.
Jeez.
I think he and Sarah Sherman would get along very well, or fight to the death, as they both seem to have very similar sentiments around comedy. He appeared on The Tonight Show 8 times as a correspondent and has appeared 3 times on Late Night. Appeared on the former SNL writing team Chris Kelly and Sarah Schneider's show The Other Two in the episode Chase Turns 14, and has also been in an episode of Bob's Burgers, Y Tu Tina Tambien. He deliberately avoids political comedy, preferring to focus on his personal experiences and viewpoints, which, is probably good because those are so surreal and wild and awesome. It's great to hear a unique voice like his.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to hear a couple other unique voices. Sammy Kay back in the SNL Hall of Fame, talking with our friend Thomas Sena. You ready to hear that conversation, Matt?
I am ready. Can't wait.
Let's go downstairs.
All right, Matt Ardill and JD, thank you so much for that introduction. Yes, today we are talking about a writer, digging into the writer category here on the SNL Hall of Fame, a very current writer that I'm really excited to talk about, has turned in so many recent classics. It'll be fun digging into Julio Torres and his work as a writer on SNL. And to join me to break down a lot of Julio's work on SNL is a multi-time guest here on the SNL Hall of Fame, Mr. Sammy K. Welcome back to the podcast, Sammy. How you doing?
Thomas, I'm doing well. I'm happy to be back. I think this is my 3rd appearance on the pod. So this is I've done a writer before, a writer sketch performer, and then just with Seth Meyers, and then I did Vanessa Bayer, a cast member, and now I'm doing a pure writer. So excited to kind of go through all these different kinds of contributors to SNL on the pod with you.
Yeah, I'm pumped to have you back. We're still waiting for Vanessa Bayer to get the SNL Hall of Fame call. So it's going to happen. I know you and I are like 2 huge Vanessa Bayer super fans, but I don't know. I think give it a couple of years. I think it might happen. I think it's closer than anybody thinks, Sammy. You made a great case for Vanessa.
I'll always, on any podcast, SNL or otherwise, make a great case for the great Vanessa Bayer. So yeah, hopefully one of these days, we finally call her number down and give her praise for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, absolutely. Y'all should go back and listen to our Vanessa Bayer episode from last season and hear Sammy and I kind of fanboy over Vanessa Bayer.
That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah, complete fanboys. I'm not ashamed to say that. So yeah, Sammy, thanks for coming back. Before we dig into Julio Torres' work, can you tell all the listeners what you've been up to over at the Saturday Night Network?
Absolutely, yeah. So, we're digging into season 49, and obviously we have a ton of different shows that we put out for the new episodes of SNL most recently. I've kind of been all over the place. I've been on, I was on the IO Debris Hot Take show, and was recently on By the Numbers with Mike Murray. And then I'm also the host of our Superfan Takeovers, which is, basically the number one destination you want to go to if you're a diehard SNL fan of all the seasons. We go in and we talk about the whole history of the show. We've recently did a one-time host draft, which was a lot of fun. Drafting hosts that only hosted the show one time, seeing who we'd want to bring back and have them host for a second time.
For that?
My top pick for that, I believe, was Conan O'Brien was my number one pick. One. And, so that is one that I thought, we kind of closed the book on. But now that he made that appearance in the Five Timers sketch for Mulaney a couple years back, and we're looking ahead to SNL 50, you never know what could happen. But so that one's a lot of fun. So, you guys should definitely check that out.
Yeah, that's always a great, Sammy, Bill Kenny is also on that pod.
Of course.
You got the Andrews Haskell and Haynes tend to make appearances, right?
We got both. We got both Andrews. Yep.
Yeah. So listen to Sammy and all of his work across the Saturday Night Network podcast universe. So yes, Sammy. So today we're talking about a writer. I know you were with me for Seth Meyers. You helped get him into the SNL Hall of Fame. Now we're talking about Julio Torres. So an interesting one today, a very recent writer. And I'm curious, Sammy, from your perspective as an SNL superfan, for you, what qualities go into making a great SNL writer?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question because I think unlike, most comedy shows or, SNL is a weekly variety show, a sketch show that, needs to churn out content, on a weekly basis or whenever there's a show, be consistent. So you need a writer that's able to obviously handle that sort of workload. But I think ultimately, if you want to get your stuff on the show, you need to have a unique voice, a unique point of view. That's something that I would definitely ascribe to Julio Torres as someone who used their experience and kind of interesting tones of comedy and was able to put that into sketches where you 100% would watch a sketch and be like, I for sure knew Julio Torres wrote this sketch, but then also could have something that you maybe didn't necessarily see his fingerprints totally on, but kind of just worked as, I don't want to say a cog in the machine, but, was able to do the SNL formula of a sketch as well. So having that balance of putting out stuff with your own voice, but also being able to put out stuff on the consistent basis that you need with a show like SNL, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. I think you're absolutely right. I think you hit it right on the head as far as I really enjoy as a viewer being able to spot a certain writer's voice in sketches. That's why growing up, I was a big Jack Handy fan because you would watch a Jack Handy sketch and know Jack Handy was behind that unfrozen caveman lawyer kind of weird sketches like that. You knew it was a Jack Handy. So I think Julio is kind of in the same vein. And you're right about not just getting put in your own little sandbox over there in the corner as a writer. I think Julio showed too that he can play within SNL's confines. And we'll see that here. I mean, he wrote from 2016 to 2019, obviously a very heated political time in the country and in SNL. Julio did political sketches, but he put his own little twist on them too. So I think you're absolutely right about he was able to play within SNL's confines, but his personality and his background still came out. His background being an immigrant from El Salvador and also a gay man, he had those viewpoints, the things that make him, and of course, it's just like very clever person too. So he had a clever touch on a lot of his sketches. And this will be an interesting one, man. Like relatively recent, only a writer for 3 seasons. Yeah. So let's get going. I'm curious, what sketch do you want to bring to the table as far as Julio Torres?
Yeah, there are definitely a lot. And as you sent over a list just to kind of refresh my memory on some of these, I'm like, oh my God, he has like a murderer's row of just classic modern day sketches. So I don't know if I want to start with like the heavy hitters first or whatnot, but I think because you mentioned the political stuff, I think a great one to bring up would be Through Donald's Eyes. And this is one that I honestly didn't realize until doing the research for this episode that he wrote. But this is one that when I'm looking back at the Trump era of SNL, totally sticks out to me as a memorable sketch. And, watching this one live, I'm just like, oh man, like this is such an amazing concept. This is the one, if people don't remember, where John Cena is playing Donald Trump. And it's, I think, right around the time after the 2016 election. Mm-hmm. And you're kind of, doing like a day in the life of Trump and seeing it all through his point of view. So for the most part, unless you're looking at a reflection or something, you're not seeing John Cena, but you're seeing everybody else. And honestly, it kind of reminded me of I think it was the Reagan sketches from like the early 80s that they would do, like from his point of view. Like I'm sure like they maybe thought that there was some parallel there when they're coming up with this concept, but it's so surrealist, and being able to take that feeling after the 2016 election of like, this is the president now, and like, what is kind of like, what is it like to look at through the world through Donald Trump? It was such a great sketch, so memorable. And I just, when I look back at that time frame and think about sketches that really, broke through and, last, because a lot of those political sketches don't necessarily hold up, that one certainly does.
Yeah, I love how it explores the delusion of Donald Trump. Like you're right. He looks in the mirror and he looks like John Cena. So that's how Trump sees himself. He's watching TV and it's an announcement that huge suits and long ties are in fashion, and I love the little detail of Trump processing things in small bits and fragmented sentences.
Huge success. Fantastic. Victory. Landslide. Fox News. In fashion. Big.
So he doesn't have like complex thoughts, and even the way he processes the world is not complex. So this was just like little touch after little touch by Julio Torres. And I should say too, along with his writing partner, Jeremy Byler, has contributed to a lot of these sketches too. So Julio and Jeremy were definitely a really good team on SNL. But just the way Julio was so adept at political satire, Sammy, in such a smart way. Like a lot of us remember vividly because it wasn't that long ago. At this point in SNL, a lot of it was just ripped from the headlines and verbatim of what somebody would say. But these were a breath of fresh air, in my opinion, Sammy. Like, what do you say these compared to like a lot of other political sketches from around this time?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like a breath of fresh air is a great way to kind of describe it, because you are kind of bringing in all the characters that we've seen throughout those sketches where they're playing off of Alec Baldwin. Kate McKinnon as Kellyanne Conway. And Cecily Strong as Melania. We've seen these characters before, but the way that he's kind of using these pieces within the world that he's building, it just kind of elevates it. And it's obviously going for something that's different from, something you'd show in a cold open. Like, I don't remember exactly where this aired in the night, but, it allowed the show to get a little bit weirder and a little bit more surreal with everything going on, because it was a kind of surreal time, like especially right after the aftermath. So kind of matching it with this surreal sketch was a great kind of pairing.
Yeah, from around this time, if it was genuinely like really smart political satire, there's a decent chance that Julio Torres and Jeremy Byler were behind it. So it's like sticking with the political sketches too. I like the way that he developed a character in Melania Trump. He developed this character. He's behind those Melania moments that aired in season 42, just kind of showing things from maybe her perspective. He got a chance to develop Cecily Strong as Melania, and it was a really and we'll see a theme throughout Julio's sketches. It was very like a dramatic presentation, almost a soap opera like quality to a lot of these. So he really developed Melania and her character, obviously with the help of Cecily Strong. There's one in particular, Sammy. I don't know if you remember this. It was during Kumail Nanjiani's episode. It was customer service, where Kumail played a customer service agent, and he ended up bonding with Melania. She was obviously starving for a connection with somebody, so it ended up being with this customer service agent. That was in season 43. That's a Julio piece.
First and last name, please.
Melania Trumps?
Excuse me?
Trump, like towers in the sky?
She asked me a little bit about myself.
Where are you from?
Then very abruptly told me about her nightmares. She said she dreamt of a blue-eyed panther drinking by a river, looking up at her and calmly saying,
"Be careful what you wish for."
Over the next few months, I became her confidant, dream journal, and one true friend. My shift started at midnight, and on occasion, I'd listen to her till dawn.
Well, have you talked to him about that?
It's difficult to talk to him about things that are not solid, things that are abstract.
Right.
She ordered over 4.
Yeah, that one is definitely one that I remember around. Yeah, the Melania moments were such a cool way to I don't know if cool is the right word, but just being able to build out the Melania character. Like I think Cecily Strong played that so well. So it makes a ton of sense in hindsight to kind of learn that Julio was the voice behind that, and was able to make that such kind of like a lived-in character that wasn't one-dimensional or anything like that. And almost like you can easily see that being a one-dimensional character, but he kind of added additional layers to her, which I don't think a ton of other writers would maybe do.
No, I don't think so. Maybe from around that time, if they're tasked to do something political, I don't think a ton of other writers would have done it with as much precision and wit as Julio did. I love the detail you'd mentioned that there were layers to this Melania character. And in the customer service sketch, I love when, Julio doesn't let Melania off the hook and just paint her as the victim, because she was introspective and everything, talking to this customer service agent, but she even pondered, like she said, if Donald is bully and I am married to Donald, am I helping bully? So that was like something that a lot of people talked about. Like she had this anti-bullying campaign and everybody's like, well, you're married to like the biggest bully in the world, essentially biggest bully in the country. So isn't that kind of something that you're at odds with? So Julio addressed that in this sketch, what I thought was great. So that's like the layers to this Melania character that could have been very one note. So where do you want to go from here? I know he just has such wonderful recent sketches.
I think another one to kind of, I don't know if stay on this theme is the right word, but Diego Calls His Mom comes to mind, going back to his experience as an immigrant and being able to blend kind of his background into his sketches. Like this is with Lin-Manuel Miranda, for people who don't remember, where he is an immigrant who, just got a job in America and is, kind of calling his mom in this pay phone that's like in the middle of this cornfield. Like everything that when I think of like a Julio Torres sketch, the visuals of it, I know that he's not necessarily directing these pieces, but he writes these sketches in a way where he kind of it paints a very vivid picture, and the SNL directors behind these pre-tapes was able to really bring it to life. So that small detail I really like. But I mean, this is like a very almost kind of heartwarming sketch. You're not expecting it to be like heartwarming, but he's just able to like imbue so many funny observations about America, like that are obviously heightened, but like from an outsider or immigrant experience is super funny. My favorite element of that is saying how we put carpet on everything, just like carpet everywhere is a very funny detail. And we saw this earlier in the Bad Bunny episode of this season 49, being able to have a sketch, with a different language involved, and kind of using the language barrier within the element of the sketch to add to the humor. So like in this sketch in particular, he's only saying so many words in English, but it adds to like the whole, the humor of it all. So this one definitely stands out.
This was one of his first real things to pop on SNL for Julio. I love the bits of using Spanglish, especially at the beginning.
Hello, mamá. Ay, mamá. ¿Qué tal estás? Te extraño mucho. Sí, North Dakota es muy bonito. Sí, North Dakota es como se dice landlocked. Sí, los americanos comen algo que se llama marshmallow salad. Marshmallow salad. No vegetales, marshmallows. Los americanos son grandes y toda su comida es grande. Les gusta comer Macs with cheese, Little Debbie's, Twinkies de Hostes, caceroles, stews, big mounds of yellow and orange food.
So he's describing the foods. That was a really kind of funny thread in the sketch. Is Diego describing the food, the different sayings that Diego has heard in North Dakota, like these immigrants are coming to steal our jobs, and he says it like so matter of factly. There was he seemingly had a romance, Diego did, with Preston, the star quarterback. And Preston was obviously like this closeted like high school athlete who was really bonding with Diego. So there was that implication in the sketch. Preston had a jealous girlfriend. I think that was Vanessa Bayer who played the jealous girlfriend of Preston.
Yeah.
So there was a lot that Julio packed in to this sketch. And Sammy, it was like touching, and you said heartwarming. It was so heartwarming, but there was that perfect balance between heartwarming and but the jokes were still there. It wasn't just sentimentality.
Yeah, no, definitely. I would say a running theme in a lot of his sketches is like, I'm not saying like all of his sketches are heartwarming, but like a lot of them have heart, or they have sort of an extra element to it that, you know, the characters are very sincere, but the situations or the concept they're going about are just absolutely ridiculous. So, you know, he was able to thread that needle really well in this sketch in particular.
Yeah, I want to stick with something that I think has heart too, and is definitely from Julio's perspective and probably how he was as a little boy and how he felt growing up as a boy. And I know this is a fan favorite, and this is Julio and again his writing partner Jeremy Byler. This was a sketch from season 42 with Emma Stone, Bobby Moynihan, Cecily Strong voiced it. It was the Wells for Boys.
Introducing Wells for Sensitive Little Boys from Fisher-Price. Wells for sensitive boys to wish upon, confide in, and reflect by. Some boys live unexamined lives, but this one's heart is full of questions. Just hear how much...
Yeah, this is such a great piece. I feel like a lot of his sketches, they almost have like a cult following to them. I feel like if you meet somebody who says like, oh, one of my favorite SNL sketches is Wells for Boys, you're like, all right, this is like a true kind of modern day, you know, diehard SNL fan. But this one's really great. Emma Stone's kind of like the perfect host to pair for this material, and he obviously collaborates with her again on The Actress. But this sketch is so interesting because it's the whole idea that we're gonna get a kid like this toy well. And it's something that, like, as you're watching the sketch, you're like, I don't really at first get, like, what they're going for. But then, like, throughout, as it continues, and it's not a long piece. I think it's only, like, 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. You, like, totally, like, it kind of clicks. You're like, oh, yeah, there are those kind of kids that you see or you remember seeing growing up. Or maybe you were that kid. Or maybe you see, like, nowadays where you're like, that kid's just, like, kind of waiting to grow up. You know, he's not like other kids. And I thought that is just so funny, and I love it when SNL, and I feel like Julio did this a lot, like, you know, is taking like this concept and it's feeling like so real, like it's feeling like an actual kind of Fisher-Price commercial. So I like that element to it as well, and kind of like the button at the end where Emma Stone is kind of yelling at the other. I assume it's her other son, like it's not entirely clear. If it's like a friend,
maybe like a classmate or something.
Yeah, maybe a classmate. I almost think it's funnier if you think it's like her other son. It's like, you know, because you have everything. Everything is for you, and this is his one thing. You know, so thinking about it as like their siblings is, you know, makes it like a little funnier. But regardless, yeah, it's just like it's so unique. Like I feel like that's something I'm going to continue to say as we talk through his sketches. But it's so unique. Just super funny, but it does kind of have that sort of, this one's maybe not as heartwarming and just more like you're kind of feeling for this kid, you know, you kind of feel bad for him, but just super, super funny.
Yeah, kind of, yeah, you're right, like feeling for this kid, or you just want to like tell this kid it's gonna be okay. And I think Julio maybe has said this about this sketch, like this, like, you know, it's gonna be okay for this kid, not at that moment. So he's just kind of like waiting for adulthood. Like this sketch, Julio wrote some like great taglines for this sketch. Like it starts off with Cecily saying, "Some boys live unexamined lives, but this one's heart is full of questions." You know, this kid's like a deep thinker and very introspective. She also says some boys like to play, others just sort of wait around for adulthood, which perfectly encapsulates what this sketch is about. Sammy, I think one of my favorite threads in this sketch, in this ad parody, is that Bobby as the dad is struggling to make a connection with his son.
So what is he putting in there?
A secret.
He'll grow up to have a wildly passionate and successful creative life, but not just yet.
Hey, Spencer! Spencer! Spencer!
Spencer? Yes, Mom?
And then this the befuddled look on Bobby's face, like how he's just like wants to connect with his sensitive little boy, but he just doesn't know how. He's confused by the secret that Spencer's putting into the well. There's just so many little details about what the boy does with the well, running his fingers along the side, looking at his pondering his reflection. There's just like, you mentioned it's a relatively short sketch, but it's just like hits you one right after the other with like clever. There's escalation in it too. Like this is just one of the, I think, better pieces over the last few years on SNL, honestly.
Yeah. And I think he, a trend in a lot of his sketches is like he knows how to end a sketch. I feel like that could be a problem. With SNL, it's always been a problem with SNL because just the fact that you're putting out so much material, like you're not always going to have the perfect ending. But I feel like in this sketch and honestly, like most of the ones that I revisited, if not all of them, they land that final joke and they land that final beat, and I think you got to commend them for that.
Yeah. I tend not to hold SNL sketches to the responsibility of ending right. So to me, it's bonus points. Like Julio, you're right. He knows how to end a sketch, and that's bonus points. If you ever watch old episodes of Kids in the Hall, they never ended a sketch. Like the sketch was over because they just ended it, and then they went on to the next one. There was no like great button. If you watch a lot of great sketch comedy shows, like the sketch is over when they just kind of abruptly end it. So ending a sketch is really hard. So Julio gets bonus points for being able to like concisely and appropriately wrap a sketch up in a nice little bow. Like this sketch, they also added. I love the little thing of them adding the other toys. So like a balcony when he's ready to make an announcement, a broken mirror to contemplate his reflection, or like just those two little elements too. So Wells for Boys, I just showed my wife like a half hour ago before we started recording. I'm like, do you remember this one? I know she was watching the episode with me, but she had to be reminded, and she's like, oh, that was brilliant. Thanks for showing me. So everybody who sees this, this is one of those where even if it's not an SNL fan, they might say, oh, I don't like SNL, but that Wells for Boys sketch was hilarious.
It's a great way to put it. Should we throw in another sketch here?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the next one that I want to talk about is, let's go with The Sink. The Sink is another one kind of from early on in his first season. And I think I was reading an interview on this one where that may or may not have been like the actual sink in Julio Torres's apartment. I hope I'm not misquoting this interview, or maybe a friend's apartment or something like that, where like, there was this real sink, like SNL like didn't have to like make this, like. So I think that kind of adds to, I don't know, just I feel like he is just a writer that just like, takes from his experiences and finds ways to like take things from his life or things he sees and turn them into a sketch, because I'd love to see how he pitched this, because the concept of it is there's just like this kind of ridiculous sink, like this kind of very glass, kind of fancy looking, wide, huge sink, and it's kind of given like a personality and like a voice, and the voice is Emily Blunt.
Am I too much? Oh my God, I'm simply too much. I'm gigantic. I feel overdressed and like I'm in everyone's way. Why do I have to be such a statement? Look at that toilet. It's just a toilet. I look like Zeus was christened in me.
It's the perfect voice for this sink who feels like, they're just like worthless and they're taking up too much space, and they don't feel like there's a utility to them that the toilet next to them has, but the toilet just looks like a normal toilet and the sink looks like a ridiculous huge thing. And it kind of makes me think like, oh yeah, there are just sometimes you just go to like a bathroom and there's just like an insane kind of setup, and you're like, we don't need all this, and it's just it's just another kind of example of him being able to combine his sort of bizarre sense of humor with like a bit of a sincere tone, like because the sink like has like doubts, like the sink like has like all these human emotions, and the juxtaposition of it is just so funny and clever.
Yeah, this was a great one. This makes me think that Julio was definitely that little boy from Wells for Boys. The way he thinks, the very deep thoughts. Like, this is a very Julio piece in its existentialism. Like, this sink is having these thoughts about its own existence and its own utility. And that's a very like a writing like this can only come from someone who has those thoughts on a daily basis. And you could tell that Julio thinks like that, like on a daily basis, probably since he was a child. So this is like a perfect Julio piece. I think Julio too, I've heard him cite this as possibly his favorite sketch that he wrote for SNL. So it seems like it's something personal for him too.
Yeah, well, that would add on to the theory that this is his actual sink. We'll go with that. Very personal sketch. Yeah,
we'll definitely go with that. I think it is. Now, The Sink, season 42, episode 3. Again, another very short piece. Like, it doesn't overstay its welcome. That's what I love about a lot of these pieces. Is you're into it. It delivers joke after joke. It's funny, heartwarming, and then it gets out. So that's a lot of mark from Julio as well.
Yeah, no, that definitely, and that kind of it's a bit of a throwback to older SNL. I feel like older SNL was more fast and loose with, a sketch could be 30 seconds. It could be like a very short commercial parody or something like that. And I feel like we've maybe gotten away from that a little bit. So, obviously this was only a couple years ago now, but, would love to see that kind of return to shorter pieces on the show.
He has so many more like classic ones. I have 3 that stick out above the rest. I'm going to ask you, Sammy, to pick a number 1, 2, or 3, and then that's what we'll talk about next.
Okay, let's go with 2.
All right, so season 43, episode 1, Ryan Gosling. Julio was behind Papyrus, which I didn't know this was Julio for a few seasons, for the longest time. And once I started digging into his work a couple years back, I'm like, are you kidding me? Julio Torres wrote Papyrus. This was such like a wonderful, and another Julio theme, like an over-the-top dramatic look at something seemingly mundane. Like, what do you remember about Papyrus, Sammy?
Oh, I mean, this, again, we keep saying it, just a modern classic. I think it says a lot about his thought process and sense of humor that, this sketch, I mean, they call it out in the sketch, like, this came out so many years after Avatar came out. Avatar came out in 2009. I think the sketch is from maybe like 2017 or 2018. Yeah. So I imagine that he is almost like, the Ryan Gosling character is almost like a surrogate for him, to where like he was probably thinking about this for years. Like the Avatar font using the Papyrus logo is like insane because it's like the highest grossing film of all time, like the biggest movie ever. And, it's almost like they could have picked Times New Roman or like any like basic font. And, I could see why that could like drive you crazy. And it's such like a specific detail to pick up on. And he just totally milks this concept for everything you can out of it and totally takes it to the level you want it to go to make it sort of a classic sketch.
Stephen. Not this again.
I forgot about it for years, but then I remembered that Avatar, the giant international blockbuster, used the Papyrus font as its logo.
Avatar.
Him talking to his therapist and everything, and I know we're talking about him as a writer, but Ryan Gosling, like, I wonder if you have another actor in this sketch, that it doesn't live up to the material. Maybe it doesn't become the classic that it is, but he absolutely murders it in the sketch, and it is one that I definitely, when I'm thinking back at like modern day SNL, is just a classic sketch.
Well, I think that's part of being a good SNL writer is picking your spots as far as who the host is, and what you pitch. And I don't think it's a coincidence that he had a lot of really great sketches and material for like Ryan Gosling, who honestly, excellent SNL host. Ryan Gosling is an awesome SNL host. Emma Stone was in at least 2 classic sketches that Julio wrote. I don't think that's much of a coincidence. I think writers want to save a lot of their best material for the host they think who can really do it justice and elevate it. So the fact that Gosling was in this, I still kind of credit Julio for that a little bit. And there in this one too, you did such a great job of describing a lot of what I love about Papyrus. There's also escalation to like Gosling describing other places where you might see the Papyrus font.
Okay, where else do you even see this font?
Hookah bars, Shakira merch, off-brand tees.
Just such specific places. And I can't be the only SNL fan who opened up Microsoft Word and typed Avatar and put the Papyrus font on it just to kind of like double check and see. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious. So yeah, I can't be the only nerd who did that, Sammy.
Yeah, and I think another great detail, again, like talking about like the time frame of when this sketch came out, like it almost feels like if this came out right when Avatar came out and then it was like a more topical sketch, you know, they wouldn't have been able to make it this sort of manic thing. Like, if it was like a coming right off of the success of it maybe would have been lost in the shuffle, but having those kind of years to kind of build on this idea of this character. And then while he's in his therapy session, you know, the therapist is like, oh, is this because like the sequels are coming out? And he's like, they're making more of them? Like, please tell me they changed the font. It's just, and again, like kind of like you said, like amazing that Julio Torres was the guy behind it, because, you know, he's, but it makes sense when you learn that he did.
That's just a theme that you talked about when we opened the podcast. It's just like when you see a list of the sketches that Julio did, you're just like marveling, like, oh my God, he did that. He was behind that. He wrote that. Like that happened to me a bunch. Like when I started digging into what he wrote. So this is just another example. I know you probably have more on your list, Sammy. Why don't you hit me with the next one?
I think we got to talk about the actress.
Excuse me. Hello, I'm Grace. Are you the director of the film?
What?
I'm the lead actress. I played the woman who gets cheated on in the gay porn.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to ask you about my line, if you have a moment. I open the door and I say, Jared, what are you doing? Not with my godson. Like that? Is that my godson?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Go put on whatever you want from the woman, Ben. You'll get your meal voucher after we wrap.
Thank you.
You know, we got to get to it, you know, because I think this might be, it's either Papyrus or the actress, I feel like, are the two that I feel like are like his biggest sketches. Another collaboration with Emma Stone, clearly, and, you know, these are from separate episodes. Like, this is when she came back to host a couple years later, I believe, after Well for Boys. So, you know, I'd like to think that she likes his sense of humor. I mean, obviously, you know, she's recently worked with Nathan Fielder, so she has like a very eclectic taste in comedy. And again, this is taking such a silly idea and presenting it in like the most dramatic possible way. The idea that this person is trying to make it as an actress and is, you know, maybe thinking about her performance from like a method perspective and trying to be like, you know, the Daniel Day-Lewis of her, you know, generation. But you find out quickly, and Beck Bennett in this sketch, like, this is like the perfect casting choice for what you learn is the porn director of this. And, you know, she's playing, you know, a wife, but she's playing the wife of two gay, or the wife of a gay man, or seemingly gay, and is, you know, they're having an affair with I think the godson, right?
Godson,
yeah, which is again like such a silly, funny detail. And she's just trying to find this character. And Emma Stone, I think, you know, obviously she just came back to host SNL this season. One of the best modern day SNL hosts. Honestly, maybe like my favorite actress in general. So having her be the person in the sketch anchoring it totally, makes it like a slam dunk home run. And her just trying to like crack the character. And while, you keep being reminded that this is for a gay porno, is just such a funny concept. And they totally continue to escalate it to the end where she has this epiphany on, and finally unlocking the character. And Beck Bennett's like, yeah, we're just going to cut that out. Like, just again, going back to him being able to end sketches, just like a perfect way to kind of wrap that up.
Yeah, at the end when she's in her car.
Deirdre, how do I get you out of me? I can't take you with me. I'm sorry. This is it. Goodbye.
She's this method actress who who just summoned this character for this very like inconsequential, silly part, and again like a dramatic rendition of something very silly. That's like a Julio Torres hallmark. Is this pomp and circumstance and all this drama and passion, and it's like just this really silly thing. The sequence of her finding the backstory and the props being pigeonholed into Deirdre's backstory, like she looks at it was like the 2007 New Year's Eve or 2017 New Year's Eve sunglasses, the Ugg boot, the one random Ugg boot, the pack of batteries, and Emma Stone's characters like trying to find like her character's backstory as far as like what do these props mean and everything. It's just like so much fun, so many little details packed in. Like these are the types of sketches that I can't take my eyes off of. And Emma's delivery of when she flatly says,
Jared, why is Godson sleeping over?
I felt the bruises.
That
I wrote that down as well.
yeah. She has just her delivery and Julio's writing. So her delivery of Julio's writing just cracks me up.
She is such a good actress, and she's good at playing this like very bland sort of mediocre actress. And Julio's writing, just being able to create this character and finding like the right host to kind of pitch it to, like it makes sense why he was able to get so much on during his time at the show.
Yeah, he was 3 seasons, but he packed so much into those 3 seasons. Gosh, there was another one. I don't know if you have anything more about the actress. I think one last thing is Bowen Yang helped Julio write this too. So I got to shout out Bowen Yang for this.
Yeah, no, definitely shout out Bowen Yang. And I think he had a quote this year where they were saying how, because obviously Emma Stone came back to host, how, they weren't going to do a sequel to it. And I think, as far as I can tell, for the most part, Julio did a lot of, most of his sketches were kind of one and done, and they were so original. So the fact that, they didn't want to do that and kind of bring that back kind of goes to show like they weren't going to, put something out there that they didn't think was going to, live up to the original. So I think you got to commend them for that.
Yeah, that's a great call. I think those Melania moments were the only things that I really noted that were recurring things, but everything else was just a brilliant one and done. There was an example of something that I love about Julio, like just very Julio Torres observations about, like, for instance, like the grandiose nature of sectional couches. Something so mundane, but Julio has just such specific observations about it. So this was in the Louis C.K. episode from season 42. It was the sectional sofa emporium.
When I was a little boy, my grandmother bought me a new couch, and I looked at it and I said, "Where's the rest of it?" That is the first of many stories you're going to hear. This is going to be long. What if I told you that where most people's couches end, yours can bend and keep going?
Sammy, I loved this as it aired, and I was so thrilled to find out that this was a Julio Torres and Jeremy Byler piece.
Yeah, honestly, this is one that during the research is one that I completely forgot existed and immediately kind of shot up my rankings on a rewatch of like, oh wow, this is super funny. And this is, kind of different from a lot of the other sketches we've talked about because I don't think this isn't a pre-tape, right? This is more of a live sketch, or there's maybe pre-tape elements.
There might
pre-recorded
be
elements.
yeah, it seems like it's a little mixed.
A mix.
Yeah.
So, but regardless, this is an example of him being able to accomplish his tone and his humor in a live sketch, even if there is kind of a mix of live and pre-recorded elements. It's something that, for the most part, everyone has experience with sectional couches, or having them, sitting on them, whatever. And he's just trying to find every single aspect of how to make it like so ridiculous, and having this kind of salesman of it, pitching it like it's kind of like a late night infomercial. It is really funny. I think Cecily in the sketch is great. They keep cutting the shots to her, and Aidy Bryant especially as well.
Oh, Aidy.
Demanding bigger and bigger couches. It's a sketch that when you try to describe, unlike some of these other sketches, they feel like they're almost like mini movies. This is one that's completely absurdist and leans way more on that sort of surrealist, absurd comedy that Julio would kind of embed in his sketches.
It reminds me of something Jack Handy would have written in the 90s, and that's such a huge compliment to Julio. I think Julio and his writing partners cite Phil Hartman as a cast member that they really love, and I could tell there's Jack Handy, Phil Hartman kind of bizarre elements to a lot of the way they think, and some of the specific wording is just so poetic and literary about something so mundane, like when Louis C.K. is sitting in the middle seat.
This seat is called the Nexus. It is the eye of the storm. The rest of the sectional is born from this point, and that is how they are made. Period.
That's such a funny literary way to put something that I just never really thought about. What is that seat in a sectional? Apparently it's the Nexus.
Right. Yeah. And just asking why people don't have sectional couches, and saying these are all made on Earth. And that's just his whole point as to why you would have a sectional couch. And then you do get a little bit of the kind of emotional sort of pathos you get from a Julio Torres sketch towards the end, where the Louis C.K. character breaks kayfabe a little bit and kind of goes on about how he used to have a family, but now that's kind of the backstory, is he used to have a family, but he kind of gave it all up for this business to be a sectional couch salesman, kind of that is really, really funny.
But then he wasn't a salesperson. He just he just has a warehouse because he didn't know what to do with all of his sectional couches, but he wanted to show them off. So they specifically say the couches aren't for sale, that he just wanted to do an infomercial just to show off the couches.
Yeah, exactly. That makes it even sort of more unexpected, the way they kind of take that towards the end there.
Yeah. And to your point, I mean, that's another example of Julio and Jeremy just ending a sketch really well. And that's kind of that's a running thread. And I didn't totally think of that when I was watching all of these until you put it that way, Sammy. But yeah, bonus points for Julio for being a rare sketch comedy writer just in general, who seems to know how to end sketches. So
yeah. And I like your way of putting that. I'm going to as far as the bonus points go, I'm going to take that away from this podcast as I, continue my career as an SNL podcaster, where it's you know what, it should be extra, an extra pat on the back if you're able to excel, kind of like Julio is in that regard.
Yeah, definitely. I want to urge a lot of listeners of that. If you just watch old Kids in the Hall, old Mr. Show, even Tim Robinson, everybody loves Tim Robinson's sketch show, as do I. He doesn't end sketches. He just sort of fades to black and then on to the next one. So I always have to remember that and remind people, don't hold SNL to ending sketches. Just give people like Julio Torres bonus points if they happen to be able to do it. So is there anything that if we were running at Julio's by his bust at the SNL Hall of Fame, and we were running video of sketches, is there anything else that maybe should go into that highlight reel?
Ooh, okay. This one may be a bit of a deep cut, but as I was doing my research on it, today for this pod, I was like, oh man, like if I have time, I will shout out. We don't have to go super in depth on it, but New Wife, which is from the Larry David episode. This was also written with James Anderson. So this one is Larry David is I think a lawyer, and he's bringing his new wife to some get together with other lawyers. I think Kate McKinnon's in this, and Beck Bennett and Chris Redd, and this new wife is played by Cecily Strong, and she I think, if I'm remembering the details of the sketch correctly, works at this like gay bar or establishment called Bottoms, and it's just like this whole sketch imbues so much sort of like gay culture and satirizes that in the sketch. Like, she sings a song and brings out these dancers, and you have Larry David in this like ridiculous suit with a big cigar, and he absolutely breaks towards the end of the sketch, and it is amazing to see. And I think it is a compliment to Julio's writing and James Anderson that you have somebody who's such like a legend, especially who's a performer and writer in Larry David, that you have written a piece that is so funny that he is unable to keep it together. That's how funny it is.
Oh, look at the time. We gotta go now if we want to be at Power Bottoms for her. 3:30 a.m. performance.
Okay, but we do have a meeting at 6 a.m.
We got that 6 a.m. meeting, right?
Oh, that's a great one. I like that Julio likes to weave in gay lingo into some of his sketches. He came back in season 45 and along with Bowen Yang helped write that Sarah Lee sketch with Harry Styles in it, and you see a lot of that, a lot of gay lingo in that. But with New Wife, I think my favorite quote from this sketch is, "The gay world isn't just one thing; it's a complex tapestry of cultures." Like, that's definitely in Julio's voice. Like, that's so well worded. That's what Julio, when he was pitching this sketch, is like, that's kind of what this sketch is about. So Larry David saying that just cracked me up. That's a really great shout out, Sammy. And yeah, Julio just did so many through. Like, if we're doing a lightning round of other stuff that he did, there was a really cool, in season 42, it was a U.S. Customs welcome video, and it actually addressed the Muslim ban. So there was like a questionnaire that just said, "Are you Muslim? Yes or no?" Said you'll be required to eat a hot dog in front of us. Like, one of the customs guys said that. So that was a Julio piece. The Game of Life DACA edition that he did with Anna Dresden, that was really, like, at the time, like, probably very personal to Julio, I'm sure, as an immigrant. That was just wonderful political satire. Drag Brunch was actually was like a guilty kind of pleasure of mine in the John Mulaney hosted episode. Do you remember that one, Sammy? I don't know how well it was liked at large, but I actually really enjoyed the concept. Do you remember this?
That one, I very vaguely. I may need you to give me a bit more of the concept of this one.
So this group of friends, it was like Alex Moffat, A.D. Bryant, a couple of other people. They went to this to go have lunch or brunch at this drag brunch. So John Mulaney was dressed in drag, and the concept is that the waitresses dressed in drag say these sassy things to the customers. So John Mulaney in drag saying these like playful, sassy things, but then he stares Alex Moffat right in the face and loses the character and says like really mean personal things to Alex Moffat in his real voice.
Somebody best be calling the fire department about this one, because that smoky eye situation has become a stop, drop, and roll one.
Oh, she got me. Together.
You've never worked for anything in your life. You've had everything handed to you. The one thing you haven't been able to purchase is a personality and a soul. All right, bitches. I'm gonna sashay away and grab.
So it's just like the the funny little play on that. There was like funny lines in that too, when they said, this must have taken you forever to at least 2 hours to get into this costume. And he's like, oh, it took me 4 hours. And he says, contouring takes a while if you're new to it. Like there's just these little lines like that like Julio will put into his sketches that crack me up. So that was a John Mulaney thing. I think Julio worked with James Anderson on that too.
Now that you've described it, I definitely remember that one, and I'll have to revisit it.
Yeah, revisit that. There's one more that I'm surprised I just didn't totally highlight that I thought it was funny. It was an idea of, again, something that's really mundane, but presented in a dramatic way is a sketch called Checks. So the concept is just like, how fun is it? I know we all use check cards and this and that, but how fun is it to just write a check and rip it off the checkbook dramatically? And so it describes like situations where somebody would write a check and just do it dramatically like that. So like making him leave your daughter, buying poison, and all these stuff. And you can get them in different styles, like baseball, Daffy Duck, or Michigan State. So the way Julio, like, this is just such a funny sketch from season 44. So that's another one in Julio's voice that I remember. And it was one where I didn't know Julio did it at the time, but finding out, I'm like, oh, that makes complete sense.
Yeah, I feel like that's another running theme is like, going back to like the qualities that make an SNL writer, being able to pick up on like their fingerprints and their voice. So being able to revisit a lot of these and realizing that Julio Torres, wrote these sketches, then it kind of all, clicks into place. You're like, yes, like I definitely see his touch on here. And you're not going to get that with every SNL writer. You are going to have the ones that, are not as, I mean, obviously he's surreal, but, having more of a, an SNL sketch type of writer and is able to put out SNL sketches. But Julio, like we said earlier, was able to kind of walk that line in a really great way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it bears repeating that he was on staff for 3 seasons and that's it. Like, that's a relatively short period of time to be on an SNL writer and to put forth as much quality material as he did. So, Sammy, like, do you think it may impact Julio's candidacy that he was only a writer for such a short period of time?
I think at face value, you could say that. And I feel like that is always, when you're looking into like what makes somebody worthy of the Hall of Fame, like I'm sure longevity is something that people consider. I definitely consider it. But if you're looking at quality, we've talked about so many sketches today that are really all-time kind of modern classics. And if we look back at like the beginning of the show, like when SNL first started in 1975, that original cast was only on for 5 years. And, some of those writers were only a part of the show for 5 years. So the fact that Julio, obviously he's not an OG by any means, but he was able to make an impact in that short amount of time. And I think, that definitely helps his case for sure. Like he has some slam dunk sketches that deserve the praise.
What do you think of Julio's legacy is on SNL, especially given like his short period of time there?
Yeah, I mean, I think he, in a way, was able to bring his experience both from being an immigrant and having that background, as well as providing like a much needed gay sort of voice on the show to open those doors and bring that kind of humor to SNL, which, especially if you're looking at like the early 2000s, the way that those kind of minority groups were portrayed is a total different time. And, a lot of those sketches don't hold up well. And, he was able to really bring that humor and make it work in the SNL environment in such a great way, made so many classic sketches, as obviously we've, discussed today. And I really think that SNL today in 2024 is still looking for somebody kind of like Julio Torres that can put out these pieces. Obviously, from if we're looking at pre-tapes, this was such a great era for pre-tapes, and Julio was such a huge part of that. And I think we're still kind of waiting for somebody like him to be a part of like the current iteration of SNL, and I think that just adds to his legacy for sure.
So there's that. Thank you so much, Thomas Sena and Sammy Kay. A well-reasoned argument as to why Julio Torres belongs in the SNL Hall of Fame. But it all comes down to you when voting opens. It's all about the listener. When voting opens, you'll get your choice to cast 15 ballots, and we'll tabulate them. I'll make Matt and Thomas take off their shoes and socks so we have some extra toes to count with. And if you hit 66.7%, well, like we say in the P business, you're in. So there's that. Let's now go to a sketch that features the writing of Julio Torres. This is pre-tape, and it's called Papyrus. And you may know it. It's a modern day classic. Let's go to that now.
It happened again. I thought it was behind me, but the dreams came back. I was up all night. I can't eat. I can't sleep.
What's wrong?
It haunts me. Nothing?
Stephen, not this again.
I forgot about it for years, but then I remembered that Avatar, the giant international blockbuster, used the papyrus font as its logo.
Avatar, the movie from like 9 years ago?
Yeah, he just highlighted Avatar, he clicked the drop-down menu, and then he just randomly selected papyrus, like a thoughtless child just wandering by a garden, just yanking leaves along the way.
And so now you're worried about the sequels that are coming out?
They're making more?
Yes, I think I heard that one.
So they changed the artwork. They fixed it.
It looks similar.
He just got away with it. This man, this professional graphic designer. Was it laziness? Was it cruelty?
You've shown me this before. I don't even think this is literally papyrus. Maybe that was the starting point, but they clearly modified this.
But whatever they did, it wasn't enough!
And now here I am doing what I vowed to never do again. Sitting outside his house, hoping to catch a glimpse of him, to see him do his little things, live his insane little life.
I think about it every time I see papyrus.
Okay, where else do you even see this font?
Hookah bars, Shakira merch, off-brand tees.
My God, are you okay? What happened?
Do you remember the Avatar logo?
Yeah, it was tribal yet futuristic.
Papyrus!
Sure.
You know what you did? I know what you did!
Oh man, that is so good. Get on YouTube and give it a watch as well, because there are some visuals to these sketches, and that is a damn good one. Gosling is great in his role, and man, I just love that sketch. I'm a bit of a font meister. Actually, if you're a font meister, you should call it typeface meister, because that's just what they call it. At any rate, I want to thank Sammy K once again for joining us. You can follow his work at the SNN. They often do superfan takeovers, and there's lots of good stuff there. Next week, however, I'm very excited as well, as we're discussing an original cast member in Lorraine Newman. We've also got special guests from the Not Ready for Primetime podcast. Give that one a listen. It's a twofer, as we welcome Gary Seath and Brad Robinson to the podcast. So that should be a good one. Will Lorraine make it? Well, you'll have to tune in and listen to the argument and make that decision yourself. Now, if you would do me a favor, and as you're leaving, walk on past the Weekend Update exhibit. There's a light switch on the wall. Turn it off, because the SNL Hall of Fame is now closed.
Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. Make sure to rate, review, share, and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media at SNL HOF. This is Doug DeNance saying, see you next week.